You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And with the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Thanks for joining us for this Locked On Texas Tech special edition. It's Big 12 weekly time as we take a look outside the confines of the 806. I want to get to a couple of stories happening nationally, Chris, and we will kick it off with not only the Big 12 conference, but at least at the hour we're having this conversation, Big 10 as well as ACC, and we believe soon to come the SEC agreeing to terms of a settlement. We've also seen the NCAA Board of Governors getting on board with this. And for those who don't know, key parts, something like this. It'll include the NCAA paying for more than $2.7 billion in back damages over a previous decade, about $1.6 billion of which is going to be withheld from what would have been distributed to those member institutions. Also, roughly $20 million going to be granted in permissive revenue sharing, expected to begin next year, that being fall of 2025. And obviously, this is where it gets into some of the revenue sharing with student athletes and how this is going to be distributed. Only God knows, really, across those athletics departments. But we have some idea. I think football is probably going to get a cut. We'll see who else is going to be on the list. But the point of all this, essentially, Chris, as we've touched on briefly throughout the last few weeks, is to avoid having to settle even bigger damages later, potentially. So I guess only time will tell if that's going to come to pass also. But here we are lining up with some agreements now being made public. And once this happens, there's no looking back. And we are truly on into the revenue sharing era, I guess you could say.
Yeah, and I think this settlement, this class action suit, it was being pushed heavily by the lawyers involved. Shocker, because I think they stand to get somewhere near $100 million of this. But everybody involved is really wanting to get this behind. Get it behind them and get going, and for fearful that, okay, what if they decide to, again, going to go back even further and take, because, this is just going to go back to 10 years, but, why would you chance them going back 12 or 14 or 15 or, when an NCAA is basically amateurism and all the things that have always been talked about. So I think that's why you see a lot of these agreements and unanimous the approval rating for this settlement, I think, through the roof. I think it's just a matter of getting people together so they can vote on it and all those things. But yeah, this was going to happen. This is what we kind of talked about. Revenue sharing was coming. It was just a matter of kind of what it looked like. I think some of the Group of Five leagues have been, because what's interesting is that all this money is really coming from, I would ask this question. It makes you wonder why nobody sued the college football playoff. They have a ton of money. Nobody knocked on their door at all. All of this money is all essentially from the basketball tournament. They've created a formula to where they determined what each league kind of had done in the basketball tournament, and they tried to tweak it. In other words, like the ACC is having to pay more out in this settlement than the SEC, because in the times that you look back, the ACC was a lot better in basketball than the SEC was. And these Group of Five leagues and the mid-majors, they're saying, this isn't fair. We can't afford this. This is, we're having to carry a lot of the burden here. And this is how we survive. But this is all the money that the NCAA and these schools, some of these leagues, that's all they have to offer up. Because the college football playoff is very selective with who gets their, big giant mountain of cash. But the NCAA has nothing to do with that. So, and this is a class action suit against the NCAA. I think that, having said that, with this agreement, it stands to reason, you've seen a lot of articles written about this, it stands to reason that the NCAA tournament and a lot of the championships, in other words, I don't see a lot of these leagues or schools going, man, we're out. The NCAA, we're going to separate and all that. Now you really can't afford to, because if there is no tournament, there is no money being generated that you end up owing. It's like this credit card bill that you've got to figure out a way to pay for, and you've got a built-in, way to pay a lot of this money via the tournament and the money that is dispersed and all these things. And so I think that in some ways the NCAA kind of, saved themselves. And I think that the NCAA tournament kind of saves itself for at least the next 5 to 7 years. Because this is a 10-year agreement, is what this class action suit, unless I'm just misunderstanding it, which is there's certainly possible. There's a lot of layers to this. But this was something like this was going to happen. It's just a matter of what it was going to look like, and then as we've talked about in previous shows this past week, the devil's in the details, and what exactly does all of this look like? What comes with it? Not just the money that we owe, but what else? What are the other bullet points that come with it? And I think some of that is yet to be determined. The Title IX, the roster limits, the unlimited scholarships. And again, as we've said, well, that's an oxymoron. How can you have roster limits but unlimited scholarships? Well, it depends on what sport you're talking about, because I think there may be different parameters for different sports, i.e. football, and then maybe everybody else or something. So we will kind of see what that looks like. But this is, as you've seen it written, this is the biggest change. And of all the realignment, of all the stuff that we've endured over the last decade, this is really the most massive change. Because, you had the NCAA several years ago arguing that student athletes don't deserve an extra $6,000. And yet here we are.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe they don't. But how's $20 million a year sound?
Is that what they meant by that? They don't deserve 6,000, deserve 20 million.
So, and yet this is, as everybody will that's writing about this and following the story, this is a massive bargain basement price compared to what it could have been. And that's why I think that everybody's running to the, quickly to approve it, because lawyers want their money. I think the people from 10 years ago would like to see some money trickle in. They've been kind of fighting this legally and all these things. And everybody is on the same page of, we need to get this behind us. We need some stability. And so they took a fairly massive discount on what the settlement, again, could have been. But the other thing is that now no more lawsuits, but like the NCAA, you can't sue them for anything. I guess maybe you can sue the CFP, you could sue the institutions, you can sue states if they try to screw with a lot of this stuff. Who knows? But here's the other thing. Now, are these, if you tap into revenue sharing, are you now a state employee, or are you a contract labor? Are you? I kind of palms up. I'm not real sure what that looks like, because that's what comes with all the other details that trickle down to other sports and programs and all these other things. So it does lead to a lot more questions than answers, but this was a major, major step, and we knew it was coming.
The college football playoff part of your question was that's interesting, and not something I really considered as to why they didn't go that route. Do you have a guess or an attempt at an answer as to why?
Well, maybe it's a matter of time. I don't know.
That's true.
But it's its own entity. Yeah. I've just found that fascinating, and maybe I don't know. But I'm sure there's maybe an obvious answer there I'm just not thinking of. But I'm not real sure why exactly, because typically, as they always say, follow the money. Well, they are responsible for generating an enormous amount, and it's getting even bigger, as we saw with these new deals and 1.3 billion and all these things with more playoff games and all this stuff. And now you've got ESPN sub-licensing games to Turner, and it's wild. But I don't know why they are not involved in any of the litigation. I don't know if they just have nothing to do with the amateurism part, and we're just like, hey, we're here to facilitate the playoff. But the other thing, Cal, that you have to realize why a lot of these schools are not going to break away from the NCAA is that who runs the because NCAA runs the basketball tournament. That's what generates the money. But they also run all these other championships. NCAA baseball tournament, the golf, national golf tournament, the national track meet that Wes Kitley's team always in Eugene, Oregon. If everybody starts breaking away from the NCAA, who runs these things?
Yeah.
No, some commissioner doesn't want any part of being responsible for that.
Yeah.
So that's why I think that the NCAA is actually going to be around longer here. And that was kind of one of the things that maybe nobody thought about at the onset. Maybe you think we're here to destroy you. And in fact, they have, because of this, this settlement, they have kind of persevered, or they have kind of stayed afloat and are going to stay afloat for the foreseeable future.
Very interesting. And all those other events you're mentioning, at least 98% of NCAA championship events funded by the men's basketball tournament, if you did not know. So give us some thoughts on that in the YouTube comments, how you're feeling about it and what direction you see it going. And maybe it was like, hey, we've got to walk through this NCAA door to begin this fight no matter what. So where are you turning if you're doing that? Well, obviously you're turning to just about the only revenue generator there is. Again, the men's basketball postseason tournament. But college football clock or college football playoff clock could be ticking as well, as far as them being a target, I guess, at some point down the road. All right, a target this week of Jimbo Fisher. The Big 12 Conference in the ACC. First, today's episode brought to you by Gametime. Never sweat buying tickets to your favorite events again with Gametime. It's always a breeze using the Gametime app, where you're going to find the best last-minute deals. And I love being able to scout out a view from any seat before pulling the trigger. And of course, it's always at the lowest price, guaranteed. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it begins, which means you can finish off that last beer at the tailgate at your own pace, because Gametime is the place to find last-minute seats to any event. They give you the fastest and easiest way to buy tickets, but not just fast and easy, also secure and simple to use. So right now, download the Gametime app and create an account and use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem our promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today for last-minute tickets at the lowest price, guaranteed. Jimbo Fisher in a conversation with On3.com and says this in part, which has gotten some attention. Quote, here's what's happening. I don't have a real good Jimbo impersonation, but all of your mid-majors and a lot of your not mid-majors, I'm going to say some of your ACC, Big 12, old Pac-12, some of those leagues, they're becoming glorified junior colleges. And some of those teams used to battle for playoffs and have great teams. They took that 3-star guy or that 4-star guy you missed, and they developed him into a heck of a player, and he became a great player at their school. Now, one of those he used as an example was the legendary Patrick Mahomes, Red Raider. He says, quote, how about Patrick Mahomes at Texas Tech? Would he have ever stayed at Texas Tech? Somebody would have came and got him. You know what I'm saying? And what's happening? Your halves are out there saying, okay, I need a corner, I need a tackle, I need a running back. And they're going to these 4-year schools and just selecting. And those guys are really becoming glorified junior colleges. And it's a shame. I mean, great college football programs that have won big in the past and had tremendously great players. But that is what has changed. He's talked about why would a player stay somewhere that wasn't competing for championships when you have an opportunity to go somewhere competing for championships. In his scenario, obviously, he's talking about the Big Ten and the SEC, though that has not aided the Aggies in competing for championships. So there may be a little qualifier there. But I get some of what he's saying, Chris, but this is also why I think it continues to be so vitally important to have automatic qualifier access to the playoffs. Because if you do have that, then you are competing for championships if your team is good enough. And I guess when I think of it that way, I don't view it all that much different really than it's ever been. So maybe 50-50. I'm feeling what he's saying, but not so much feeling what he's saying. What are you making of these comments?
Whoever put a microphone in front of Jimbo Fisher and asked his opinion on the state of the sport and then decided to take it seriously, oceanfront property in Arizona, man. I mean, you're talking about a dude that they paid $75 million to. Please go away. Leave our football program alone. Don't touch it anymore. You've done enough. Here's go buy an island money. Get away. I mean, this is really what you and he usually
That's a good point.
He usually talks so fast you can't hardly understand what he's saying, anyways.
His name is Jimbo, after all.
Yeah. So, look, I mean, there's been have there been some players that have gone to the Big Ten and the SEC from some of these leagues? I mean, there's a handful. I mean, Will Howard left Kansas State to go to Ohio State. You know, that's a recent example. And yet Will Howard's not necessarily the starter at Ohio State. And I think the people at Kansas State feels like, I mean, we're actually in better shape without Will Howard here with Avery Johnson under center. So, you know, you had a handful of players move around. I would disagree with his premise. Maybe it will eventually get more lopsided in this space in the coming years. But I mean, TCU played for national championship 2 years ago. I mean, Kansas State is still, you know, I think wreck and shop. Oklahoma State is still kind of doing their thing. A lot of people feel like Utah is you know, ready to contend for the Big 12. But here's the other thing that I say is, like, he singles out the ACC and the Big 12, and there's some programs there that have struggled, and I certainly understand that. However, I mean, this is where we get to the whole Jamie Pollard commentary from Iowa State, the athletic director there. I mean, you're telling me that Vanderbilt, while it's a Harvard-like junior college, it's still a junior college athletically. I mean, your Mississippi States and, you know, South Carolinas, your Marylands, your, you know, Northwesterns, you know, some of these institutes, Rutgers, I mean, on and on. So yeah. I just don't know if I buy that you can paint it with a broad brush and suggest that, because you just didn't really see a wholesale player movement with a lot of these players leaving those leagues to go to these other two. There's a handful of examples, but you also had players going from those leagues to these other two too, you know? But I don't know. Jimbo Fisher is I don't know. I'll be nice. Hey, man, we miss you in the sport, Jimbo. I miss those opinions. It never a dull moment when I could understand what you were saying. But, I'm not really buying this just yet.
Just tough to fork over that money to a guy named Jimbo. It would take an Aggie to want to do that. But shout out to any Jimbos potentially in the Locked On Texas Tech audience and or fam family. All right, let us know how you're feeling about those comments. You're buying, you're selling, you're feeling, you're not feeling. There in the YouTube comment section. We'd love to hear from you, and thanks for joining us for a little bonus time on this Locked On Texas Tech Big 12 Weekly Edition. Chris, appreciate your time as always, man.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. We'll talk to you next time. Keep hope alive, everybody.
And subscribe on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode, and we hope to see you for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.